Now I'd like to welcome to the microphone Paulette Whitton. Paulette's from the U-rall-e-i and Gamilaroi peoples in North West New South Wales and is Annecto's first Aboriginal Liaison Officer. A very warm welcome, Paulette. Come on over. Hello. It's all yours.
Oh dear. I have mid-ear experience, but usually I talk into a microphone when nobody's looking at me when I do radio. So having all these faces looking at me is a different sort of feeling today. But anyway, I hope I can get you can learn something from my talk today. First of all, I'd just like to thank Uncle Tony earlier from the Wurundjeri people for his welcome to country. And I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land on which we gather today, the home of the Wurundjeri and also, I believe, the Bunurong people. As in Sydney, there is, I think, a little bit of a dispute on who are the traditional owners, but I acknowledge both when I go into areas where that sort of issue is prevalent. I pay respects to the elders, both past and present, and acknowledge the strength and resilience of our Aboriginal aunties, uncles, brothers and sisters. And I also acknowledge the Torres Strait Islander community members who make this country their home as well, because I know there is a significant Torres Strait Islander community here in Melbourne as well. A big yama in the Gamilaroi language is a greeting, a hello. So yama to you all. And as Peter said, I am a U-rall-e-i Gamilaroi woman from North West New South Wales in outback New South Wales, around, if anybody's heard of it, around the Lightning Ridge sort of area, and Gamilaroi on my dad's side around the Coonabarabran and Burrabadee Mission area as well. But I also have the added bonus of being a self-confessed Kinchilla kid. And for those of you who don't understand that, you saw the award winners earlier, and one of those was Uncle Michael Welsh from the Kinchilla Boys Home Aboriginal Corporation. Kinchilla was a boys' home in the area of Kempsey in Dunghutti country in New South Wales, and that was home to several hundred Aboriginal boys and some girls in the early years as well. And my dad was one of those members of the stolen generation who was taken from his family and placed in the Kinchilla Boys' Home. So, and they were given numbers when they entered the boys' home, and my dad's number was 31. He was a twin, and his twin's number was number 32. So they became known as number 31 and number 32 throughout their time at the Kinchilla Boys' Home, which is sort of like, you would relate a number system to being a prisoner of war, I think, or to a min number as a member of the prison population. But these were little boys, and they were given their numbers as well. So in that case, I'm a self-confessed Kinchilla kid. I'm a second generation of stolen generation family as well. And I acknowledge Uncle Michael, and here is one of my uncles from the Kinchilla community. And also acknowledge Brother Mark Spinks there as well, and congratulations on your award, you fellas, too deadly. Now, as Peter introduced, I am the very first Aboriginal Liaison Officer for Annecto, the People Network. All my question was, what took you fellas so long? Here we are in 2015. I actually worked in Australia Post about 1990, and I work with the Aboriginal Liaison Officer there up in Sydney. So Aboriginal Liaison Officers aren't new. They've been around for a while, but great that Annecto has finally taken that initiative as well and to employ me as their first ALO, and I hope I do you all proud. Now, Annecto came to this conclusion of employing an ALO because of their commitment to inclusion, and also mainly because the Western Sydney office, my fellow colleagues, created that space for the inclusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. They, in their work in Western Sydney, the home of the biggest Aboriginal population in the country that we call Australia, makes Western Sydney their home. Many people think they've got to go to the Northern Territory for an Aboriginal experience, but when they hit Sydney, they're already hitting the home of the biggest population of Aboriginal people in the country. Now, my fellow colleagues noticed that they were working in the biggest Aboriginal community, but no Aboriginal people were accessing aged care services. And so they set about doing some research on why that was, and they found that it was because they were fearful of being shoved in a nursing home. The culture of the organisation wasn't welcoming to include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and they were also frightened that these gubbars, these whitefellas, were going to come in and take their grandchildren. So the practice of historical practices have really still currently very effective on Aboriginal people's lives. So that's basically the reason how Annecto's come to have an Aboriginal Liaison Officer, and with the pushing of the Western Sydney office, led by my boss, Mike Hercock. And to come into a new space where there's, no familiar faces for the Aboriginal community. We're used to big mobs walking around, just walking in and saying, "Hello, cuz." And when there's no Aboriginal people there at the face of an organisation, that sort of doesn't seem so inviting for Aboriginal people. We like to see things that make us feel welcome, like number one, Aboriginal people, an acknowledgement of the traditional custodians, Aboriginal flags, whatever and language maps, like the one that we have up here on the screen at the moment. And I'll talk a little bit more about the language maps a bit later as well. Now, one of the major parts of my role as the Aboriginal Liaison Officer is to develop a reconciliation action plan. And it's all about turning those good intentions into real action. It's a business plan to create a meaningful relationships, enhance the respect and promote sustainable opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Now, with my previous job, I used to come across raps all the time. Every man and his dog was creating a rap. And I was thinking, what happens if you don't have a rap? Do just leave Koori's out of the marketplace? What's going on? And I used to, in my previous life, I was a radio broadcaster on Koori Radio in Sydney, and I managed the place for 3 years as well. And I had these thoughts like, what would people do without a rap? And now here I am, a couple of years later, and I'm developing one. So it's a bit of karma coming back to bite me, I think. Now, while I'm based at Western Sydney, and Western Sydney office is leading the charge with the Reconciliation Action Plan, this is not just about Western Sydney. We've got blackfellas all over the country. And so this RAP is about all of Annecto. So I encourage all the Annecto sites and staff to really have a think about how you currently relate with your local Aboriginal community. Are you accessing your Aboriginal community? If you've tried and had some difficulty, why is that so? And maybe what you can do better, and also know that the resource of having an Aboriginal Liaison Officer based in the Western Sydney office can be utilised by your areas as well. Now, Annecto has not in the past kept records of the backgrounds of their employees and who identified as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. So it's very difficult for me at the moment to actually know how many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employees there are. Besides myself, I've found one out of the Mildura office, but if you have a colleague that you work with in the support area or wherever, in whatever capacity, then I would love to hear from those mob as well and involve them in the RAP process and maybe some other networks that we get going in the future. Now, I'm also trying to connect Annecto with some of the elders in the Western Sydney community who would like assistance in terms of aged care packages and so forth. And we've had two of our elders who were comfortable enough to sign up with Annecto since I started in April. I don't know how good the record that is, but people can tell me whether that's a good or bad record. But I've got to speak with a lot of elders around the community and just to let them know that that's their choice if they do want, to be assisted by an organisation like Annecto, because there is, our people like to be serviced by their own people in a lot of instances. So one of the things we're trying to do is like to build an Aboriginal workforce as well, so they've got Aboriginal people coming out to support them as Annecto staff as well. So there's a lot of things that we can sort of look at, but meanwhile, others, Aboriginal community members, like, you know, somebody who's a stranger to come in as well sometimes. So it all depends, and giving our mob a choice, and they're really appreciating, from the comments that I've had so far, appreciating that level of choice. We also have, Annecto also has partnerships with Yuwaalaraay, same Aboriginal Corporation, and Babana. Annecto has an MOU with KBHAC at the moment that allows me to assist them in support roles, such as with their media and comms, with my media background, and I'm also a Kinchela kid, as I said, and I'm helping to coordinate the descendants now. We've got a really great strong network of the Kinchela men happening. It's taken a number of years since they started in 2002, and now we're looking at the descendants and bringing the descendants together and to try and deal with their issues and see how we can support them into the future as well. Now, in connecting with the Aboriginal community, this is all about building Annecto's cultural knowledge. So it comes to the point where relating and dealing with the Aboriginal community is second nature. It's not something that can be taboo, or you're scared of connecting with the community. It just becomes a part of the normal day operations, a part of the culture at Annecto. And we're trying to do this through establishing, as I said before, an Aboriginal workforce, maintaining connections with the Aboriginal communities, and increasing cultural understanding. Now, when I talk about cultural understanding, I want to get the message across that Aboriginal people are not all the same. There are some similarities, but there are differences as well. Differences when you talk about country. We've got saltwater country, we've got freshwater, and we've got desert country. And our cultures and customs relate to the country that we belong to. And it also puts up the challenge of what you think an Aboriginal person looks like. I think there is a stereotype of, with the Reconciliation Barometer that Reconciliation Australia produced, and that found that a very high percentage, like 90-something% of Australians had believed that they never had met an Aboriginal person before. But what do you think an Aboriginal person looks like? It could look like fair skin like myself, and can just blend in with some of the community, and you may not think, I've had that said to me many, many times, you don't look like an Aboriginal person. And I say, well, what do you think an Aboriginal person looks like? And I think they go back to the, dark-skinned person, standing on one leg with a spear, wearing a lap, and that's not how we look. Our culture has adapted and changed along with the changes that we've had to endure through colonisation, and we've been around for 70,000 years plus, so we've had to adapt and change to our surroundings as well. So that's a bit of a challenge to actually think about what you think an Aboriginal person looks like. Now, in relation to the language map that I have behind me, there were hundreds of tribal groups who spoke up to 750 different languages and dialects across the country. At invasion, and I will say invasion because for inclusion to happen, there must be acceptance that there was resistance and massacres when the British arrived. Now, after having 750 different languages and dialects at invasion, we now have fewer than 150 Aboriginal languages that remain in daily use. And all except roughly around 20 are highly endangered, they say. Now, this Aboriginal language map is by no means totally correct, because one of my mob's not even on it. We've got Gamilaroi on it, but the U-rall-e-i mob is not there. But it's sort of around the top of New South Wales, there up the top where there's a little pink bit, and that's Cooma. But our U-rall-e-i mob are in between Cooma and Murrawari. And that map there is just showing you New South Wales plus Victoria. there. And in Victoria, the Victorian Aboriginal Corporation for Languages identifies that there were 38 languages and 11 language families in Victoria. And many of the 38 languages are further divided according to clan groups and their traditional lands, while the 11 language families are grouped according to shared words, grammar and sounds there as well. So can anyone tell me what the Wurundjeri Boonwurrung greeting is here in Melbourne? We all know how to say hello in French, Italian, and I did spoke to Uncle Tony before, and he said that there's two. I can't remember the word he used in his Welcome to Country. I should have wrote that down, but the other one is Wananjilka as well. So, and I hope that I've pronounced that correctly. But it's something to, familiarise yourself with as well. Now, the theme for this AGM Awards and Story presentations is enabling self-determination to lead a life of potential. Now, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights states that all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social and cultural development. Now, by walking alongside the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, Annecto are helping to support our Aboriginal peoples, our Aboriginal businesses and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community to require and reach that self-determination. And we thank Annecto for helping to give us that leg up into society as well. Now, my presentation today is just a small glimpse into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. You know, I don't know everything. If you're looking for an Aboriginal expert, you're thinking wrong, because there is no Aboriginal expert. When you consult with the Aboriginal community, you consult with groups of Aboriginal people. And don't expect any easy answers, because there ain't none, I'm telling you. Because colonisation has equalled division as well. Now, there are 4 levels of the Reconciliation Action Plan, and Annecto is starting on the very first level of the Reflect RAP. They're taking baby steps. They'll get to crawling. There's a long way to go before they walk culturally safe with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, but their life journey has just begun. So let's ensure those good intentions make deadly action, and deadly in blackfella means good. So thank you very much. A big didgeridoo. Didgeridoo is thank you from the Darug people of Sydney, and bringing a little bit of Sydney to Melbourne as well, where I've grown up and live and work there as well. So didgeridoo, and thanks for your attention.
Didgeridoo, Paulette, and Wananjilka. Did I get them right? I should work on that, actually. Thank you very much. As somebody who comes from from South Queensland originally, many thousands of years ago I was, it was really very interesting looking at the language map and thinking, I wonder what the language was there. I'm going to check on it later on. Thank you very much indeed, Paulette. Oh yes, please, another round of applause for Paulette.